Okay, parents, if your Christmas shopping list looks like toys that don't end in tears, meltdowns, or glitter explosions, listen up. Play Therapy Supply is basically Santa's workshop for neurodivergent kids, but with actual purpose behind the play. We're talking fidgets that calm instead of overstimulate, social skills games that don't feel like homework, and sensory tools that help your kid's nervous system chill the heck out. If you've got an ADHD kiddo who's curious, creative, and occasionally climbing your curtains, this is where you'll find gifts that meet them where they are and build the skills they need. So skip the cheap plastic chaos this year. Hit playtherapysupply.com and fill that cart with gifts that actually make sense for your beautiful, busy-brained kiddo. Because a regulated kid is the best gift you can get this season. Okay, Chaos fam, today we're doing something a little different. We're slowing down, dropping the armor, and walking straight into the stuff most parents only whisper about. And honestly, it's about damn time. I'm sitting down with Daryl Potter, a writer, a father, and a man who has fought his way through grief, loss, depression, and the messy, beautiful chaos of raising a neurodivergent child. His book, Even the Monsters, isn't some glossy everything happens for a reason kind of story. It's a flashlight in the tunnel so many of us are stumbling through. This episode is for every parent who's ever felt overwhelmed, ashamed, exhausted, or terrified you're screwing it all up, and still shows up anyway. For the parents climbing mountains made of Legos and emotional landmines, Daryl opens up about the parts of this life we rarely say out loud. The grief, the identity shifts, the holy hell, this is harder than anyone told me moments, with a level of honesty that feels like a collective exhale. So grab your emotional support iced coffee or whatever keeps your nervous system from filing HR complaints. This conversation is raw, real, and exactly what so many of us needed. Let's dive in. Daryl, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Pleasure to be here.
So I am already caffeinated, as you can tell, but I am wondering what is in your cup this afternoon.
I start almost every day with a latte with my wife. We built a little plant room on the back of our house, so we like to sit out there and enjoy a latte and figure out our day together, and then go our separate ways.
I love that. That sounds wonderful. That sounds like a perfect start to a day.
It is. It is.
So I am a sucker for a good origin story, and I would love it if you would share yours with me.
Sure. I was born in Canada, raised in California, 19 years old, so farming country, Northern California. Um, 19 years old, moved back to Canada for university and never left. I'm in my 50s now, so what was just for school wound up being permanent. I have worked 34 years for one of Canada's largest banks, but before that, I've worked everything from construction to nursing to a medical genetics laboratory to roofing to farming. And I started working full time when I was 13. I was 10 when I decided I wanted to be a writer for a living, and I was uh, decades into the bank before I finally found a path to publishing. But so now I run the two careers kind of alongside each other. Okay, on a personal level, married, 28 years, two kids. Mackenzie's our oldest, and our daughter, and son is in third year university, or just finished third year university.
And so I have to ask, tell us about the book.
Sure. So I've got five out there now, but the most recent one is the one that I thought we might enjoy talking to each other about. It's called Something More, Living Well in a Broken World. And it leverages off of experiences with my daughter, but it's half commentary on an ancient poem called Ecclesiastes, but a roughly 3,000-year-old poem that's exploring the meaning of life. So it's fascinating to to hear modern day angst and concerns and so on expressed in poetry from 3,000 years ago. Our technology's changed, the human nature and life experience has not. We may have hot water today, but we still have all the normal troubles of life. And so it's a mixture of memoir and commentary on that ancient poem as I work through applying it to the 21st century.
Very nice. And you said it stems from parenting your daughter?
hmm So she's the simple version for your audience is she's autistic and also has epilepsy. The more detailed is she's got two extremely rare conditions of which the epilepsy and the autism are merely external symptoms. Two conditions are extremely rare. She's the only human on the planet with both.
Wow.
She was not expected to live past age 3, given 10% chance of living past that age, and basically zero chance of living past her teen years. It's a degenerative condition, ultimately terminal. But she's 24, so she's a bit of a miracle. As part of her life experience, in addition to seizures and all the fun of autism, she's gradually lost the ability to communicate verbally. She was 12 when she spoke her last words. She was in her teen years when she stopped walking with a walker, and she can stay awake 48, 72 hours straight, high activity, high energy, vocalizations. She may not be able to walk, but she can certainly make her desire for attention and so on known. And then she'll sleep for 12 or 18 hours, and then she'll go back at it on another 4-day bender. So she keeps us on our toes.
I'm wondering, I know we have quite a few members of our audience that have nonverbal children. Do you mind sharing some tips and tricks that we could use?
Sure. One of the things, so we had verbal with her and lost it, but the cognitive capabilities that would have existed when she was younger have also declined. So it's an unusual situation to have that contact and lose it over time. For my wife and I, it comes down to a really close observation and mixed with a great deal of guessing, as I'm sure your parents will appreciate, and a lot of deep affection, despite the poor communication. And you have to almost put yourself in her shoes at times to recognize it must be very frustrating to feel things, to want things, to react to things, because we don't even know how much she understands what we're saying anymore. This is going to sound like a horrible analogy, but you know how people have a dog that's in the family so long and they're convinced that the dog can speak English, the way they communicate. But you don't know. Am I just layering on my own wishes for what I think is being understood? How much is it it's a horrible thing to compare your child to a pet, but it's a similar strange emotional dynamic in this situation. And so you need a lot of also patience for yourself. You're going to guess wrong. You're going to misread. You're going to have no idea what's going on. Just like when they were 6 months old and they cried and you're like, you're dry, you're fed. I burped you. What's the problem?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Unfortunately, they're teenagers now, or in her case, she's 24. And it's like, I can't read your mind. I'm trying. And sometimes they're just having a mood and need to get it out. And
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do.
I think that 90% of my parenting is guessing, if I were to
Mm.
put a
hmm
number on it.
I read a thing this morning that I found so helpful to me psychologically. I could have stood to read it a long time ago. There's a big difference between making a mistake and having a bad outcome.
Mm.
So with the data presented, you can try your best and you might get it wrong, but with the data you had at your disposal, it was the best guess you could make in the moment. That's that might lead to a bad outcome, but that's not a mistake really. That's working with the information you had that you're available. A mistake is when I know they're hungry
Mm,
and I'm not feeding
yeah,
them. A mistake is when, I know they're frustrated and I just say something or do something that's going to provoke them further. That's not
yeah.
it.
I'm going to try to keep that in mind. I feel like your book title, Something More, hits that ADHD parent nerve. I feel like we're always chasing that elusive more, more
Mm,
calm, more peace, more regulation. What does more mean in your world?
sure. Yeah, good question. The book, as I mentioned, is diving into that ancient poem. The ancient poem uses a word that in English translates as breath to describe the reality of our existence. It uses it as a metaphor. Breath, breath. Everything is breath. All of life is utter breath. And it's using the metaphor to speak to the repetitive, mysterious, uh, hungry nature of existence that's also fragile and ephemeral and never satisfying.
Mm,
I do yoga on the side as a bit of a personal meditation, calming kind of practice that I find helpful for my back and so on. And they do a lot of breath work as part of that. And but the fact is, it doesn't matter how good you get at breath work, you can't take a really deep, good quality, mountain air breath and feel like, I'm done. I don't need to breathe the rest of the day. Like that was a good one. So it's such a great metaphor for existence because we are all hungry for something. My day job is still banking, and I'm amazed after almost 3.5 decades now at how true it is that the richer you get, the more you realize that you just can't satisfy yourself
mm.
in this life. I come from a Christian background, so we could dive off into spiritual topics, which I'll probably spare your more general audience. But the reality is, for all of us, we want more. And ADHD may turn that up several notches, but human beings want more. So if you're operating that hunger cycle on, level 8 of 10, and somebody not suffering from ADHD is operating on a 4 of 10, you're still operating in the same spectrum and you still want more.
Yeah.
And recognizing that that's just how you're wired helps calm the mind to focus on the moment, recognizing that chasing the next breath is just going to make you want the next breath.
Mm. So I am a Buddhist, so my whole existence is based on
Mm,
this breath. So that resonates deeply
yeah,
with me.
it would. It would.
The other thing that came up when you were talking is I've heard this study so many times that, and you may understand it as a banker. At some point, I think right now it's around 75,000 a year. More generally means less satisfied, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
No, 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 100%.
There's like a cutoff there where we're chasing it and then it kind of plateaus. And I think right now it's around 75,000 a year.
Yeah,
But that came up for me whenever you were talking about more in the banking world.
100%. You can only eat so much food and wear so many clothes
Yeah.
and drive so many cars at a time. After a while, it's a diminishing, in the banking terms, we would say there's a diminishing rate of return. Once
Yeah.
you're warm and you're dry and you're fed, it's
Yeah.
not quite the same leap anymore. Yeah.
So I guess along those same lines, comparison is to me the poison of our modern world, but in particular our modern parenting. I just had a conversation
Mm,
this morning where I feel like most of our parenting challenges comes from the way we feel we'll be judged, especially in the ADHD world.
yeah.
So what would you say to the mom or dad listening that's watching everyone else's kid win student of the month and theirs are getting suspended for fidgeting or,
Hmm. Hmm.
eating paste?
Yes. I can relate actually to both sides of that because our daughter would get actually sent home from school for being disruptive.
Mm,
Uh, and it was for medical reasons. Like, she's having a seizure. This is distressful for us. It's like, people, you've got nurses on staff to deal with this kind of stuff. Stop making it our problem.
Yeah.
Like, we have 16 hours a day and you have 8. So deal with your 8. This was back when she was in school.
Yeah.
So we had many parent teachers where meetings with the principal where I'd have to read them their own rule book. But anyways, that's getting off topic. On the flip side, though, our son, we joke that he's everything. He's the exact opposite of his sister. Whatever his sister left behind in the womb, he grabbed on the way out because he's third year engineering and getting great grades, and he's tall and he's handsome and he's articulate, and he could probably make a living as a writer or a psychologist or the engineer he's chosen to be, or he's like everything you want, and from a comparisonitis point of view. And the reality is, with either of them, I only really get joy in my relationship with either of them and connection with either of them when I engage with either of them where they're at on their terms. Because the reality is, there's somebody else who did slightly better on a particular course. There's somebody else who's half an inch taller or has slightly bigger biceps or like, you're never going to win. If your kid's getting gold medals in swimming, they probably are terrible at track or, math or something like, so the comparisonitis thing is deadly in either parenting category. I just think, I was going to say, I was going to use odd wording, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think it might be good wording. The parents of special needs children are more conscious about being conscious about their comparison concerns. The parents of exceptionally gifted or talented or handsome or whatever children are less conscious of it, but just as controlled.
Very true.
I sometimes think my special needs parent peers are actually better at engaging with their children than those who only have healthy, successful children, because they get very focused on the gymnastics or whatever the thing is that's their kid's thing, and they lose sight of the human.
I'm not sure if it is my self-work that has made me aware of that, but I definitely try to pick up on now, am I worried about grades for him or me? Or just try to keep that in mind. I love that you said that.
Awesome. And I like the fact that you were self-work, because it takes self-work to be a parent regardless.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So this may not be a kosher question to ask, but I only have one child. So I'm wondering,
Sure.
with the extreme dynamic that you have in your two, how have you guys handled that? And is it any different than any other parenting journey?
It is. And we were blessed with stumbling across a book before we had our second child, or maybe he was an infant, I'm not sure. But it's called Raising Extraordinary Kids. And it spoke about the dynamic, warned us about a dynamic ahead of time. And that is the risk that the child with challenges is the one who sucks all the oxygen out of the room in terms of parental focus and energy. And so we were very pre-warned and took that warning seriously, and really made sure we were conscious in our morning lattes to even raise the topic of how we were balancing medical drama with Mackenzie versus other life experiences with our son. We've never, for example, taken a family holiday together because our daughter's situation for her whole life has been severe enough that one of us always has to be with her. And so my wife has done stuff with our son. I've done stuff with our son. We've just never gone away altogether. One of the adaptations to reality we've had to work around. But again, even within those limitations, been very focused on how we meet their unique individual needs. My daughter needs a lot of time because of her nonverbal state and so on, where you just sit with her. She might even ignore you for the first while until she realizes you're not going away. And then she scoots over and leans on you or holds your hand or engages in some sort of hand play or whatever might be on her mind at the time. Whereas our son has a different communication style and a different needs orientation and so on. So I'd say that conscious, deliberate effort to make sure there's balance and special needs doesn't equal all the attention.
That is not where I thought you were going with that, but I think that was the
Mm,
perfect answer because, and this is terrible, but I mean, I tell everyone who asks,
mm,
we only have one. And I feel like I don't have the anything extra, the extra energy, the
mm,
extra space, the extra anything for another kiddo. So kudos to
mm.
you guys for making it such a conscious decision because I really feel like he's getting 100% of me.
Right.
And it's crazy because people will say, you've done all this training, you've went to become such a great mom. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that. And thank you for that. But I'm spending all of it.
Mm.
Everything I learn is going in one direction.
Well, what I would say is for your parents listening who are hearing that, thinking, oh, there's a luxury in being able to focus, your son will have the advantage of that focus. Our son didn't have the advantage of that focus, but what he had was the learning experience of having to share focus and be self-sufficient in certain ways and so on. So I would say your son got a benefit or a blessing. Our son got a benefit or blessing, and they are different benefits and blessings. And again, even between parents of special needs children with different setups, it's important that we recognize that differences even there can be good. And it's not like, oh, Danielle's done a better job. Me, I didn't give Mackenzie my full focus. Mackenzie had to learn to share.
Yeah.
And she didn't like it. Actually, her first words to her brother, she's 2.5 years older. Her first words to her brother was to scoot over when he came home from the hospital. He was still in the little car seat. She scooted over and she rocked it a couple times. And then she said, bye-bye, baby. Bye-bye. She knew early on, uh-oh. But she's learned to share.
Yeah. My son has asked for a sibling, and usually I knew it was serious because I would run down the list of, well, do you want to share mom and dad? And he would say, yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, do you want to share your toys? And then he would say, no, let me think about it. But then when we finally got to the point where I would say, well, would you share your toys? And he said yes. I was like, okay, so he's serious now. Okay, mamas of sensory seeking, constantly moving, touch craving kiddos, listen up because I've found the holy grail of calm. It's called Ted Kangaroo, and they make sensory products that are actually beautiful and built to last longer than my patients on a Monday morning. But the real MVP, the Sensory Squeeze Seat. It's this genius compression chair that literally feels like a hug for your kid's nervous system. My son says it's like a great hug that rocks. And honestly, he's not wrong. It gives just the right amount of deep pressure without making him feel trapped. And here's the thing, every single kid that comes to our house, they all want to turn every single time. It's washable because kids. It's sturdy, and it's become our go-to chill spot for meltdowns, homework, and those 5 minutes before bedtime chaos moments. So if you've got a sensory kiddo who needs comfort, grounding, or just a little peace in their body, go check out Ted Kangaroo. They're out here helping our kids feel safe, supported, and seen, one squishy hug chair at a time. So I am curious to know how you have woven Mackenzie into the poem Reflection, if you don't mind to
Mm,
elaborate.
yeah, absolutely. So the poem Reflection, the Ecclesiastes does such a fun job of mixing. Uh, First of all, he's a king, the writer. He's super rich, super wise, super lots of stuff. Uh, by his own, of course, estimation, but also there's a few histories of the period that speak similarly about him. And he uh, he does a bizarre thing with his life, starting early on, where he says, "I want to know in this you know breath-filled life how I get lasting benefit." So he goes on a quest to figure out what in life is going to be like super meaningful and he tries partying, he tries the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, 3,000-year-old, equivalent. He couldn't have a playlist on Spotify, so you know, as one writer mentioned that I thought was kind of funny. He said, if he liked the band, he bought it. So he literally accumulated Palace. Music groups. He built architecture. He built exotic gardens in a desert, so he had to invent water control stuff. He did all of this crazy stuff, and then he also explored things like social justice and relationships and childlessness versus marriages. He got married tons of times. The aging process. He's probably in his 60s when he writes this poem. Uh, so all of this stuff. And so it allows the writer to explore so many topics that are so relevant today. So weaving Mackenzie through this, as well as my own life and other stories about our family and so on, and even workplace. Yeah, it was just rich material to raise a section of the poem that say talks about social injustice and then talk in ways about how sometimes social injustice manifests itself even in a schoolyard. Um, even in I tell a story that I could easily get distracted here and use up the rest of our time talking about, but a school bus situation we had with a wheelchair bus and how she was um, unjustly treated and including a safety issue. And when my wife tried to deal with it, she got the usual, well, you're a special needs mom, and full-time mom now. So we're not taking you seriously and we're not listening to you and we're opening and closing the file
Mm.
without paying attention to anything you've raised. And that was an example where she booked time with them, with their board to talk, which was bold, and then sent me. And so instead of sleep exhausted special needs mom, they got 6-foot banker husband in a suit. And I brought my daughter, which they weren't expecting either, and sat her down at the boardroom table. And then we hammered this stuff out. And, so it, the way I weave the modern material with the ancient is to pick up on the fact that the things we stress about today are things they stressed about 3,000 years ago. Whether it's injustice, it's poverty, it's loneliness, it's discovering that partying isn't fulfilling me, but I don't know what to do next. Um, Whatever it is, it's very modern relatable. And then rather than just telling you it's modern relatable, I bring in stories that illustrate the 3,000-year-old point in this case, usually Canadian, although I started in the US because I grew up in California. So I tell some occasionally funny California stories as well.
I can't skip over that you had a school board issue, and I would love to know if you have any tips for all of the parents in our audience that may encounter that. I come in hot and heavy as a Southern mama bear, and that's not always the
Yeah,
correct way. So I'm
yeah,
wondering if you
yeah.
have some other points to talk about there.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, my wife is a fantastically organized individual. She does not have a second's worth of ADHD in her. She worked in a law firm before our daughter was born. Our daughter's medical stuff kind of shelved that career. But so she's the documenter, the detail person. She's got all the receipts, so to speak. So that's super helpful. She can graph it all out in a spreadsheet and show dates and times and signatures. So, and she's been very, very, very conscious of never being your listeners can't see me doing air quotes here, but being that mom. Because even school board people are human.
Yeah.
On a certain level, it's a job. I'm here. I want to go home. I have my own kids, my own, stomach ache, my own mother-in-law situation, my own whatever it is. Uh, and so when a parent comes in hot and heavy, it's just human that you react, defensively.
Yeah.
So it's never helpful. So she was always conscious about never being that mom. Um, but then when she sends me in at times, just as a counterpoint, often I'll take a similar but complementary approach in exploring what their drivers are. And this is me bringing my workplace, my bankside workplace, to the table. I work in a head office, and so I'm often trying to get things done with departments or peers or external parties that don't work for me. And so I need to act through influence as opposed to, direct control. And emotion definitely is not how you do that in a bank head office. So a lot of it is seeking out. I ask a lot of questions. What's your policy on this? Not as an attack, but do you have a policy associated with wheelchairs or this or that? Can I look at it? And being patient enough to go away, even if I'm pretty sure I know what it says. Sometimes just asking for the materials because I want to go away and read it puts them on notice that they're operating at a different level now. And then when I come back in the follow-up meeting, having read it, and maybe 90% of the time I already knew everything that was in there. I didn't really need to wait, but it just helps warm my audience up to take me seriously.
Yeah.
And then asking them more questions around, okay, your policy is this, but you did that. Is there a union rule that I'm bumping up against here? No. Is there a Ontario is our province, similar to a state in the US. So is there an Ontario piece of legislation I'm unfamiliar with that this is bumping? No. Is there a federal legislation I'm bumping up against? No. Is there a local school history or policy or experience with risk that is no? So are you just being difficult? Like, help me understand why you're not supporting my daughter in this particular circumstance. And it just helps guide them towards working with me. But it also there is a stick at the end of it. I tell a story in the book about having done one of these kind of exercises with in a particular situation, and at the end of it, I said, "Okay, thank you for being really transparent because I really just wanted to understand. Thank you for answering my questions. And now that I understand, there's no policy, union rule, federal legislation, provincial legislation. There's nothing but your own decision making. That really helps me understand your point of view. And therefore, when I go talk to a lawyer, I want to make sure I'm representing, your situation well. And it's amazing how fast the backpedaling starts occurring when they realize they just told you they don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
But there'll be other situations where they do have a leg to stand on. There's a legal rule. There's a union policy. And so then you have to get clever about, okay, how do I work within that constraint? Because I now know the principal is not my enemy. The principal's got one hand tied behind his back. So how do I work in that context with him on my side,
Yeah.
as opposed to just getting him defensive? He's already annoyed about the hand tied behind his back. It doesn't help me if I'm just another friction in his life. So that would be my advice is, boy, it takes a lot of self-control though.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why for my wife and I, the partnership helps.
Yeah.
She does the handoff when she's at the end of her rope.
Nice to work as a team.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Thank you for sharing that. I always like to add to my audience that even though my natural state is Southern Mama Bear, I have been met time and time again with people who genuinely care about my kid And it's hardly
Hmm.
ever needed for me to go in guns a-blazing. I'm usually met with people who want to help and most of the time can help. So I just like to add that in there for those who come in hot like myself.
I love that because I've got a bunch of school teachers as friends, and not one of them went into the profession because they wanted to become a
Yeah,
millionaire. Uh,
yeah, for sure.
so underneath maybe their frustration with being yelled at by too many parents or a union rule, underneath it all, there is still a human being who went into this job for a reason.
Yeah,
And your job is not to bury that person under layers of defensiveness, but to help draw them out
yeah,
as an advocate, because that's why they got in the job to begin with. Most of them.
most of them.
Yeah.
Sorry to go off there. I knew starting an ADHD podcast would not be linear, but I did not want to skip over that you had some really good tools there to use in those meetings.
For sure. No, I love that digression. That was a good one.
So, we've talked about how Mackenzie is woven in. What did you take from the self reflection of the book writing?
Oh, excellent question. Because for me, it was a really important personal journey. I'd done a similar book previously on the book of Job, another ancient poem on suffering, related to me dealing with the existential stress of, I didn't sign up for this. How did the universe wind up saddling me with being a special needs parent? That was not my vision for the future. After I finished that book, I was in a state where I could live with the universe, and not feel like I needed to exit the planet to deal with my reality, but I still wasn't enjoying life. And I knew that poem was out there as a touchstone for the meaning of life. And I will caution readers that if they take from this podcast, hey, let me go read that poem. The English translations usually totally mess it up. That breath, breath, everything is breath has been brutalized in English to something along the lines of meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless, which is really stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. Breath is a lot of things, but it's not meaningless. And there's all sorts of scholarly commentary on how that came to be and how bad an idea it is, but for some reason nobody changes it. The For myself, what I needed was I recognized that I wasn't enjoying being alive. I was becoming a labor machine. I was working my day job. I was enjoying the writing aspect, but it was a small bit of my world. And a lot of our life was sleep deprivation because our daughter's deal goes 24 hours. The partnership with my wife is great until you're just becoming each other's handoff. Okay, tag, you're it. Okay, great. Tag, I'm it again. Plus the normal, your roof needs to be repaired or the car needs, the tires changed or something. I just wasn't happy. And I needed to know how to deal with a life full of breath that wasn't satisfying me and that lasting benefit satisfaction that I could never find. And enough of a spiritual and banking background to know that the answer wasn't ultimately my daughter being miraculously cured or winning $1 million, because the hunger wasn't going to go away, actually. I needed to learn how to be happy, period. And so for what I took away was I've learned how to enjoy life better. I actually end off the book talking about how I'd engaged a therapist to teach me how to have fun, which, it's a little bit of an embarrassing thing for a guy in his 50s to say he's had to engage a therapist to teach him on this. But I actually did. I needed that third party who wasn't living in my household to help me understand. I described a nothing day I'd had where I chilled out finally for a day. And what I did for the day, and my therapist looked at me and said, that was a nothing day. Like, you did this and you did this and you did this. Yes, it was a lot less than you usually do, but we really need to help you understand what having a nothing day
Yeah.
is. You dial your nervous system down, dude. Your standards are way weird. And it so the book helped me get started on a journey. I don't think I'll graduate in time for the grave probably, but it jump started my progress.
I love that. And I have quite a few questions. I hope I can remember all of them and not take us down the ADHD rabbit hole. But I think one of the most important things in there is, and it's probably every parent, not just neurodivergent parents, but we have to grieve the child that we thought we were going to have. And it sounds like that
Totally.
first book that you mentioned, not your first book, but the previous book, is
Yeah,
kind of that journey.
you got it. You got it. You nailed it.
Any tips for us out there doing that?
Yeah, the subtitle of that book was Living with Grief, Loss, and Depression. And I actually had a critic criticize it, saying you shouldn't be living with grief, loss, and depression. You need to get over it. It's like, I'm sorry, but my daughter's not going away, and every day is a new challenge. There's a certain amount of grieving and being depressed that she and I both have to deal with this every day. That's ongoing. This is not a just get over it thing. I do get over it, and then I get over it again, and then we'll do it again. So yeah, you do have to grieve, but don't stay
Yes.
there.
My follow up question to that is, you said that you had to learn how to be happy or how to have fun.
Mm.
And I know that would be
Mhm.
different for each parent out there, but for parents on our not so typical journey, what tips would you have for them in learning how to
Mhm.
have fun?
The thing that the writer of that poem, Ecclesiastes, keeps coming back to as he's looking for that lasting satisfaction and not finding it is he keeps coming back to variations on a theme, which you, with your Buddhist background, would actually resonate with as well, where he says things like, you have to learn to enjoy lunch, or when you get up in the morning, put on white linen, which culturally just meant clean, fine, stylish. Another point, he says, you need to learn to enjoy the wife of your youth. This coming from a guy who kept trading wives, trying to find, the perfect mate. And he's like, I should have just stuck with the first one and learned how to enjoy her, because cycling through this bizarre number that he did, he never really made progress. Uh, so he keeps coming back to what we would nowadays, thanks to Buddhism and other teachings, we would use terms like mindfulness has entered the popular lexicon more broadly. It's one of the things that I find yoga does for me, in the I'm on the more yin side of that, which gives me it's better for my older body, the slower stretch oriented stuff, but it really helps me calm my high energy nervous
Yeah.
system. I don't think I'm ADHD, but I'm definitely wired for stress. And whether that's conditioning or actual genetics, I'm not sure. But
Same. That was actually my third question, sheerly selfish, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
When you were on this journey of learning fun
Mhm.
and healing your nervous system or calming your nervous system, what techniques were you using other than yoga?
So a lot of it was just you use the word self-work, or a phrase like that earlier in our discussion. A lot of it was awareness. So therapists help, being open with friends and family about the things that I was learning about myself and needing to change, gave them permission to then point things out that were non-beneficial to my way of living. Ongoing, it includes things like really reflecting, whether it's on a day or it's on a week to come, how I balance out the needs of my own self, not just the calendar or the list, I was going to say the honey-do list, but I make my own list. If my wife doesn't, I don't need her to make one for me. The process involves sometimes reflecting. I didn't go to yoga last night. I had a crazy day at work and a bunch of things going on. And I just, at dinner, the family was expecting me to be departing after dinner. And I was like, oh, no, I booked out of yoga tonight. I need to go to bed early tonight and recognize that that's my reality. Sometimes it's not after the fact, but preferably it's before the fact. I had a day a few weeks back where I knew I was in for a tough one on a particular day, just because I had things starting early in the morning and they were going to late at night. And so I had that nothing day that I quoted to you earlier, where I deliberately decided I'm not doing any of these chores today. I'm going to, you know, I went on a 10K walk and listened to a Margaret Atwood novel on the walk. That's what my therapist was joking about, saying, okay, you listen to great literature and got 10K of 10 kilometers of exercise in. That's not exactly nothing. But for me, it was system calming. And I do find walking in nature to be a really amazing practice. I love the Japanese, I think there's a Japanese term that I forget, but they call it forest bathing. They don't get wet in the forest. It's just the process of walking in a forest and soaking up the sounds and the sights. And it actually there's enough studies on people looking at green and the effect it has on them. And then lastly, and this is beyond the reach maybe of many listeners, but is something to either aspire to or to find other ways to accommodate. Just before COVID, the timing was perfect. Just before COVID, we put an addition on the back of our house and made it all glass. There's a little bit of shade and so on associated with it. And then I ripped out our back lawn and planted basically a mini forest, which is kind of ridiculous because we live right in the suburbs. But the result is and the trees are like supposed to be 40 feet apart and they're like 5 feet apart. I've spent enough time in the woods to know that trees don't know anything about staying 40 feet apart from each other. So I just packed them in and all different varieties and leaf colors and everything. And that's been so helpful, whether it's our morning coffee looking out on this, or it's the end of the day going out to do some watering. It just changes the mood to spend that much time looking at nature. So if somebody's in a condo in the middle of downtown, you can either say, well, that doesn't work for me, or you can get some houseplants, or you can spend more time at the local park or what have you. And if you've got listeners that are in the country, count your blessings and get out of the house and enjoy that greenery. There's lots of studies to show it actually makes a difference.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing those. I think I needed the reminder that, well, getting outside for one, but kind of just slowing down and becoming aware of how worked up I might be.
Yes. Yes, I think we all need that.
Yes. I am not sure if you can speak to this, but I am wondering how your wife decompresses as the primary care provider, not the only, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to her experience, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. So, number of things. One is she recognizes that by the end of the day, her brain is done and she needs to dial down what she commits to. So I think there's a bit of self-care there in terms of being smart about how many evening commitments she makes. And she's also smart about at times friends are getting together and she just lets them know not tonight. It's been a rough few days or what have you. But on that note, she keeps a very, very strong, good friend group who know her really well. Because I think if a spouse is relying only on their spouse for that, whether it's person to laugh with or shoulder to cry on or sounding board for things, that can be a lot of pressure on a relationship where both may be experiencing the same stressors or similar stressors. So she's got those friend groups that are not shallow. They're not gossip clubs. They really are, they laugh, they talk, they go shopping together, but they also can have that heartfelt 4 hour coffee shop, deep dialogue. And those are not rarities. Those are probably 60% of the material.
Yeah.
So I think that's another way. She also, I think it's important, I believe in this thoroughly, and she's done a great job of finding interests because she's stuck as a stay-at-home mom now, just because of the realities of our daughter's situation, finding interests and things to engage in so that her entire identity isn't that of a primary caregiver. So for her, it's sewing. She makes bespoke handbags for both charities as well as custom orders and so on, but she doesn't have a website. It's word of mouth. It's small. We used to do the website thing and so on, and then she dialed that down because she didn't want the pressure of all of that. But she enjoys the craftsmanship part of that. There's something about making that is different than watching TV. there's some satisfaction in learning, stretching those neurons, developing a skill, wrestling with a problem, overcoming it, having an end result to show.
Yeah.
It's a little bit for me. I do it with writing. I do it with gardening and bonsai and things like that. So that's another area in which she's fantastic. And I'd say the last thing I would point out is being very articulate with what she needs. So the nights have been really bad, well, for decades, but particularly lately, or maybe we're just getting older and it's harder to take it. And so over dinner, we were talking uh, just last week, the three of us, because our son is home from university for the summer, and she said, "Here's what I need. I need a few times a week for Daryl to do the morning meds so she can get that extra bit of sleep. And she needs Jackson, our son, to pick up a meal a week so that she's got one less meal she's cooking. He's a perfectly capable cook. Uh, give her the grocery list. She'll go off and make sure he's got the groceries for it. And both my son and I were like thrilled to know there's something we could do. Guys tend to be like better at the just let me fix it as opposed to the 4 hour coffee chat by nature. So we were thrilled, but she could have been stressed, frustrated, and annoyed, or she could just say, "Here's what I need to make my life better. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
We were like, "Yes, we can totally help you." We suck at reading minds. We've been married. I've been married to her for 28 years. I still can't do it. Uh, but I can say yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you guys have the teamwork, and I love that you said that she advocated for what she needs, because I feel like a lot of times us as moms feel like we have to do it all. And
Hmm.
that is BS. It's not true. You can ask for
Hmm.
help and it will be granted. And I think that's so important.
I think it's especially true for women. There's like I don't know, cultural. I used to think it was certain racial groups, and I started realizing as the more I talk to people, it's everybody. It doesn't matter what color you are. There's just an expectation that women will do more and they
Yes.
won't ask for help.
It's unfortunate.
End of the conversation.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And so and the problem is on both sides because if the woman doesn't say something in a way that's not like complaining, but like, "Hey, I need a hand. Would somebody be willing to help me?"
Yeah.
Then, I mean, guys can do a better job of trying to mind read, but
Yeah.
we really are not very good at it.
I want to say one last thing, and then I want to definitely lead people to your book, because, and maybe more than one book at this point, because I think that we could all use it and relate to it. But I appreciate your frankness about your journey,
Hmm.
how open and honest and kind of no BS that you are about it. I love that. I think that we need more of that instead of the sugarcoating and pretending like it's all okay. I love that the way that you've handled the interview today.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you. You can find me actually on LinkedIn, and you'll discover that the way I talk on this interview is the way I talk everywhere. And if somebody can work for one of the largest banks in North America in a head office capacity, leading a significant discipline for the bank with a team and everything else, and I mention only that because banks are about the most conservative and political, outside of actual politics, kind of work environments,
Yeah.
stereotype for being severe and non-emotional and whatever. Um, I think it opens the door for many others to do likewise.
Yeah.
And in my experience over the decades, it's only helped me because then peers, partners, and my staff know what's going on. If I'm having a rough day, they're not like, "Oh, he's a jerk." It's like, he probably had a bad time with his daughter last night.
Yeah.
Let's ask him how he's doing. So it just helps people help me more. And the other thing it does is it helps the number of people who have come to me with their private unusual circumstances has made me realize I'm surrounded by 100% of people with unusual private circumstances. They're just all different.
Yeah.
And therefore, by being human, we let those around us be human. And anybody who's not it's probably because their situation is even worse than I imagine, and therefore they are so blocked and in pain that they can't even be reciprocally human,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So please don't live with a bottle stopped up over your heart. It's no way to be.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. Is LinkedIn the primary place to find you, or is there others?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, or my website has all the links. So that's probably the easiest. So www.darylpotter.com. That's DAR1R, Potter like Harry.com. And you'll find all the links to the books there. You'll find links to my social media locations there as well.
And of course, I will link all of that in the show notes.
Excellent.
I have enjoyed this much more than I have a lot of interviews lately. I want to thank you so much for your time today. And selfishly, I always ask at the end, if there is one thing you could tell struggling ADHD parents right now, what would it be? And it's always really just for me. So
I would, the thing I would tell them is you're not alone. You're special, but you're not unusual. And because of your unique circumstances, you have the opportunity to really know your child or children the way other parents may miss the opportunity to do so until it's too late. At my age, I see people trying to fit with their grandchildren. But I think special needs parents can focus early because they don't get away with not focusing early.
yes, per usual, that was exactly what I needed to hear. And I think that was the perfect way to end. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Danielle. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
I told you guys, if you're anything like me, you're going to need a minute or an emotional support cookie to let all of that settle. Conversations like this aren't easy. They crack things open. They remind us that parenting a neurodivergent child isn't just appointments and IEP meetings and behavior charts. It's a whole identity shift. It's grief and growth tangled together. It's love so fierce it sometimes burns. And hearing Daryl lay it all out with zero performative positivity, whew, that was a gift. If today's episode hit you in the gut in a good way or a well damn, now I have feelings kind of way, go check out Daryl's new book. It's the kind of story you tuck into your nightstand because it speaks a language you thought only you understood. And hey, if this episode reminded you that you're not broken, not failing, and not alone, please do me a favor. All the things for the algorithm gods, like, comment what really hit home for you, and leave us a review, 5 stars obviously. But so much more important, I need you to share it with another parent who's been carrying more than they let on. We're building a community around here where the messy parts aren't shameful, they're shared. Thank you for hanging out with me in the deep end today. Next week, we're back to our regularly scheduled chaos and caffeine-fueled hacks, neurodivergent nonsense, and all the wild, wonderful stuff that makes this podcast what it is. Take a deep breath, drink some water, and remember, you're doing a hell of a lot better than you think. That's it for this week on Chaos and Caffeine. I'm your ADHD parenting bestie, Danielle, and I'll see you back here next week for a brand new conversation. Okay, ADHD parents, if you've ever said, I just need one thing that actually helps us stay on track, I've got you covered. Meet Pop Sugar Cafe Printables, the creative powerhouse turning chaos into calm, one gorgeous, brain-friendly printable at a time. Pop Sugar Cafe isn't just about cute designs, though they are stunning. It's about giving neurodivergent families tools that work. Visual schedules, emotion charts, routine planners, and positive reinforcement systems that make everyday life feel doable. These printables aren't built for Pinterest perfection. They're built for the real life mornings with missing shoes, cold coffee, and a kid who suddenly hates pants. So if you're ready to swap the daily overwhelm for something that actually supports your family's rhythm, check out Pop Sugar Cafe printables, because structure can be beautiful, functional, and ADHD friendly all at once.